Chapter 1 The Night of the Eclipse. The kingdom of Valerius had never been quieter. Even the wind held its breath as thousands gathered beneath the rising moon. The ancient stone courtyard shimmered with silver light, and every wolf in the realm felt the pull of something old, something sacred, thrum in their bones. Tonight wasn't just any ceremony. It was the coronation of a new Alpha King. At the center of it all stood Kael Draven, cold, controlled, and terrifyingly composed. He was young for an Alpha King, but the weight of leadership already lingered in his gaze. His presence was the kind that silenced crowds without a word. Some said his power was too strong. Others said it came from the curse of his bloodline. But all agreed on one thing. He was born to command. Golden banners of the Draven pack hung above the ceremonial steps, and royal guards lined the courtyard in precise rows. Everyone seemed to be holding back the thoughts, as if speaking Kael's name too loudly might summon his attention. Because he didn't need to snarl. He didn't need to roar. People obeyed him anyway. This coronation was unlike any before. The moon wasn't just full, it was on the verge of a lunar eclipse, a rare celestial event that only appeared once in several lifetimes. As the shadow of the earth began to creep across the moon, the priests whispered old verses from the prophecy. Greater than, when the moon loses its light, the Alpha King gains his throne. Power will rise, bonds will break, and destiny will choose its mark. No one knew exactly what the lines meant. Some believed the prophecy warned of a dark age. Others believed it promised an unmatched rule of strength. But everyone agreed on one thing. The eclipse was no coincidence. Kael's entrance. As the first shadow touched the moon, Kael stepped forward. He wore no crown yet, only a dark ceremonial cloak, draped over his broad shoulders. His eyes, an intense steel gray, scanned the crowd with sharp precision. Every elder, every warrior, every pack from distant territories, all of them watched him. They didn't see a king. They saw a mystery. Some wolves whispered about the wars he had won. Others murmured about the night he became alpha of his pack, rumored to involve a battle so fierce that the moon itself turned red. None of it was proven. But no one dared to ask. Kael never explained his past. He simply ruled it, a stranger at the gate. While the ceremony unfolded, someone arrived unnoticed at the outer gate, a human girl named Elara Thornveil. She came quietly, wrapped in a travel cloak, unaware that she'd stepped into a night that would change everything. She didn't know about the prophecy. She didn't know about the Alpha King. She only came looking for answers. From her spot in the shadows, she felt something pull at her, an instinct she couldn't explain, as if the moon itself was urging her to stay. But humans weren't allowed inside the ceremonial grounds. The guards watched her suspiciously. Still, something strange happened next. Kael looked toward her, not toward the nobles, not toward the warriors, but toward her, only for a second. But it felt like the air cracked. And Elara felt a pressure in her chest, a chill across her skin, a warning, yet also a strange sense of recognition, like her soul remembered something her mind did not. She didn't know why the Alpha King looked at her, but the moon was almost fully covered now, and destiny had just taken its first step. The final words. The eclipse reached its peak. The last sliver of moonlight faded, and darkness swept across the sky. Kael knelt before the sacred stone altar, his head bowed, his hands clenched. The priests raised their voices. Greater than, on this moonless night, we crown the Alpha King. He who carries the burden of strength. He who must rule without fear. Kael stood as the crown of Valerius was placed upon his head. The wolves howled across the land in acceptance. But high above them, the moon stayed dark. Elara didn't understand what was happening, but she suddenly felt that same darkness bloom inside her chest. And before the night ended, Kael Draven would sense it too. The Alpha King was crowned, but his fate had only just begun. And somewhere in the shadows, destiny had found its match. Chapter 2. The Forbidden Entrance. The ceremony had ended, but the energy remained. Wolves mingled across the courtyard, nobles exchanged cautious congratulations, and every warrior swore loyalty to the new Alpha King. But behind all the celebration, a quiet fear lingered. The moon had stayed completely covered, longer than anyone expected. Some saw it as a sign of power, others, as a warning. Kael Draven said nothing about it, but he noticed Leora again. He shouldn't have. The scent of humans usually faded quickly, but hers didn't. It was subtle yet unusual, like rain before a storm or frost in summer. Not threatening, but impossible to ignore. And that alone made it dangerous. The trespass. Leora knew she should leave the royal grounds. Humans without permits weren't just unwelcome. They could be punished for trespassing, especially on the night of an Alpha King's coronation. But something kept pulling her deeper inside. She followed a stone path lined with flickering lanterns, her footsteps quiet, careful, almost instinctive. As if her feet already knew the way. She was an outsider, a stranger, but she didn't feel like one. The air grew heavy as she passed the guards. Normally, no human would have been able to cross the border without being stopped, yet not a single warrior challenged her. She didn't know that Kael had silently ordered them to stand down. He wanted to see where she would go. A daughter of secrets. Leora carried a worn leather satchel, clutching it with a tension she couldn't hide. Inside it were the only clues to her past, fragments of letters she found after her mother vanished 5 years ago. Her mother had never spoken much about their family, only leaving one haunting line behind in her handwriting. The moon will take what it's owed, and it will come for the bloodline. That was the reason Leora came to Valerius. That was the reason she couldn't leave, even though her instincts begged her to run before someone noticed the human trespasser. But someone already had, and he was watching closely. The encounter. Leora stepped into the silent garden at the back of the palace grounds, a place humans should never have reached. Cold air swept past her as she stared up at the moon, still concealed by shadow. Then, a voice cut through the quiet. "You shouldn't be here." She froze. Kael Draven stepped from the shadows. No guards, no council members, only him. His presence alone felt stronger than any army. His gaze wasn't angry, yet it made her heart race. "I didn't mean to trespass," she said carefully. How did you get past the guards?" He interrupted. "I don't know." He studied her, not just her face, but her scent, her heartbeat, the subtle tremble in her voice. She didn't smell like fear. Not quite. She smelled like something rare. But he didn't understand it. Not yet. Something he can't explain. What brings a human to a coronation meant for wolves? Kael asked. "I came for answers," she said softly, meeting his eyes. "My mother wrote things before she disappeared. I think this place is connected to her past. I just need to understand why." Kael's eyes narrowed. Her answer wasn't what he expected, but it wasn't a lie either. He could sense lies. He'd built his reign on detecting them. But there was something else he sensed too. Something far worse. Her heartbeat matched the rhythm of his. That shouldn't be possible. Not between an Alpha King and a human. A disturbance in the bond. Kael felt the pull again. Faint, but undeniably real. It rattled him enough that he almost stepped back. Leora didn't understand. She only felt drawn to him. Not with romance, not with admiration, but like a force she couldn't escape. Like the moon had chosen gravity just for them. They said humans couldn't have bonds with wolves. They said humans couldn't be marked by the moon. Tonight would prove those beliefs wrong. A gust of wind passed between them. The moon trembled back into view, barely enough to cast light, but just enough to reveal a silver mark faintly glowing on Leora's wrist. Kael saw it. His eyes widened. For the first time that night. A mark not from birth. A mark not from magic. A mark of destiny. And destiny had just trespassed on royal land.
The silence after the encounter lingered long after Leora left the royal garden. Kael didn't follow her. He didn't summon guards to arrest her. He just stood completely still, replaying every second in his mind. A mark on a human, under a moon that refused to shine. That wasn't normal. It was impossible. The council gathers. Before dawn, the royal council assembled. They had sensed the shift in the air. The wolves called it lunar disturbance, a tremor in the natural order. Only highly attuned wolves could feel it, but tonight, even the guards had shivered at its intensity. Elder Rowan spoke first, his voice grave. The moon stayed hidden too long. Something interfered. This is not a matter we can ignore. Another elder, Lady Morella, leaned forward. The coronation was successful, but our king must be warned. There is danger ahead. The prophecy. Kale entered. The room fell silent, not out of respect, out of instinct. He said nothing, but they all sensed his mind was elsewhere. They mistook his silence for calm. It wasn't calm, it was calculation. The prophecy revisited. Lady Morella placed a weathered scroll onto the table, sealed with moonstone wax. Only the Alpha King was allowed to open it. Kale broke the seal and read the ancient words. The script was jagged and fading, written by a prophet who vanished centuries ago. Greater than, the moon will choose a heart beyond the blood of wolves. A bond that breaks the laws of nature. She will carry the mark, and lead the crown to fate. For if the Alpha meets the moon's chosen, his rule will either conquer all, or collapse the realm beneath it. Several elders exchanged uneasy glances. A few whispered prayers for protection. Elder Rowan spoke again. We should begin searching for any human in the kingdom who bears a lunar mark. If the prophecy is awakening. I've already found one, Kale said quietly. The room froze. The hunt begins. Questions rushed toward him, names, orders, details, but Kale raised a single hand, and the room fell silent again. She entered the grounds last night, he said. She was drawn to the moon during the eclipse. No fear, no hesitation, and the guards let her through. She manipulated them, asked an advisor. No. Kale looked toward the window, as if retracing the scene. They simply didn't stop her. That unsettled everyone more than any rebellion could. If the prophecy is true, Lady Morella said carefully, that girl must be found and questioned. Kale didn't respond, not immediately, because he had already decided something. She would be found, but not questioned. Understood.
Meanwhile, Leora's escape. Leora hurried toward the outer districts before sunrise. She expected guards to follow, or alarms, or an official escort demanding answers, but nothing happened. The city acted like she didn't exist, which scared her even more. She made it back to the inn she was staying at, a small room above a bakery. She locked the door, sat on the floor, and unfolded her mother's letters again. The oldest one had a symbol drawn in its corner. She had never noticed it before. A crescent moon, and beneath it, the same mark that now glowed faintly on her wrist. Fear crept through her slowly. Her mother had known. Her mother had expected this. But was her disappearance part of it too? Leora didn't know. But one thing was certain. She couldn't leave Valerius now. Not until she learned the truth. The Alpha's decision. Back at the palace, the council argued. Some demanded an investigation. Others warned of chaos if the prophecy spread. But Kale spoke only once. She is not to be harmed. Not followed. Not interrogated. Not by anyone. Elder Rowan hesitated. You mean to take this matter alone? Kale's eyes sharpened, like a blade being drawn. I mean, he said, to see where fate leads. Moments later, he left the council chamber. Not as a king surrounded by advisors, but as something far quieter. A hunter who had just found his trail. The council worried about political fallout. They worried about revolts, rival pacts, treaties. But they didn't understand the real danger. Only Kale understood. The moon had chosen someone. And when destiny chooses, it does not choose softly. Chapter 4. The Bond That Shouldn't Exist. The morning after the coronation was quiet. Too quiet. Valerius's streets were bustling with merchants and villagers, but Kale Draven barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere, on the human girl who had trespassed into the sacred grounds, the girl whose very presence had sent shivers through his blood. He shouldn't have been thinking about her. Humans didn't affect alphas this way. They weren't meant to. And yet, her scent lingered in the air long after she'd vanished. Subtle, wild, unyielding. Like a shadow under the sunlight. A meeting of fate. Kale didn't have to look far to find her again. Leora had returned to the marketplace under a borrowed cloak, pretending to blend in with the crowd. She had already felt the pull, the invisible thread tugging her toward the palace, but she was careful. Humans in Valerius weren't supposed to enter Alpha territory, and even one mistake could cost her everything. Kale, however, had no intention of letting her slip away again. He appeared suddenly, stepping through a narrow alley, blocking her path. His presence was overwhelming, like a storm contained in a single figure. "You should not have returned," he said quietly, his voice low but unwavering. I didn't know where else to go," Leora admitted, her voice steady despite the flutter of fear in her chest. Kale studied her carefully. "Why are you drawn to this place?" She hesitated, realizing that even a partial truth would only raise more questions. "I don't know, I think it's because of the moon." He froze, the words confirming the bond he had begun to feel, the impossible connection he couldn't yet name. The first pull. Kale's instincts told him to walk away, to leave the human girl to her fate and focus on his duties as Alpha King. And yet, he couldn't. Every step she took, he felt it, a pull in his chest, like gravity toward her. Every breath she took, he could sense it, as though it mirrored his own heartbeat. It terrified him. "Your mark," he said, pointing subtly to the faint crescent on her wrist, "it's not natural. Humans cannot carry the moon's touch." Leora followed his gaze and instinctively covered her wrist. "I don't understand," she whispered. "I've had this since I can remember. My mother, she always said it was special. I didn't know what she meant." Kale's eyes darkened. The warning in the prophecy became clearer, sharper. If the moon had chosen her, it meant he had been chosen too. And the bond forming between them was dangerous. Forbidden. Dangerous curiosity. He tried to focus on her words, on the mundane truth of who she was, but the more he looked at her, the harder it became to ignore the sensation coiling in his chest. He had felt it before with wolves, rivals, allies, even his own pack members, but never like this. Never this deep, never so consuming. "You don't know what this means," Kale said slowly, his voice low and controlled. "But you are tied to the moon, and through it, to me." Leora's eyes widened, disbelief flashing across her features. "Tied to you? I don't even know you." Kale's jaw tightened. "You don't understand. And soon, you will. The moon doesn't make mistakes." Even as he spoke, the pull between them grew stronger. His hand itched to reach for hers, not out of politeness, not out of desire, but instinct. A part of him whispered that the bond demanded it. A part of him feared it. A clash of worlds. Humans and wolves were never meant to share this kind of connection. It was dangerous, forbidden, a mistake that could bring war, heartbreak, or death. But Kale had always been one to bend rules, to defy prophecy, and yet, even he knew there were forces far older than him at play. Leora stepped back instinctively, sensing his rising tension. "I don't want to be a problem," she said softly. "I just want answers." Kale exhaled, trying to steady the storm inside him. "You are no mere problem," he said quietly, almost to himself. "You are the key to a future none of us can yet see." For the first time, he allowed himself to admit, even to himself, that the bond was real. Not just a pull of the moon. Not just fate's cruel joke. But something alive, dangerous, and undeniable. And it had chosen both of them. The silent agreement. Neither spoke for long minutes. The marketplace bustled around them, but in the space between their words, the world narrowed down to a single truth. They were bound. Neither could escape it, neither could ignore it, and neither knew what it would demand of them, or the kingdom. Kale finally took a step back, his eyes never leaving hers. "Leave for now," he said. "But do not wander too far. Fate has a way of finding those it chooses, whether they want to be found or not." Leora nodded, swallowing hard. I'll try." He let her go, but not before realizing one terrifying fact. The pull between them had already begun to shape him, bending even his iron will in ways he could not yet control. The Alpha King had been crowned, but the bond had already taken its first claim. Chapter 5. Secrets Beneath the Throne. Night had fallen over Valerius, but the palace remained alive with whispers, flickering torchlight, and the subtle hum of power. Kael Draven sat alone in his private chambers, staring at the moon high above the kingdom. Its crescent glow barely illuminated the courtyard below, yet the shadows seemed to twist and shift unnaturally. He didn't need eyes to sense the unrest that ran through his halls. It was in the air, in the walls, in the faint tremor of his pack. And he didn't need eyes to sense her presence. The pull was stronger than ever. Leora Arden. Even when she wasn't near, he could feel her, a heartbeat out of sync with the world, yet perfectly attuned to his own. The thought made him tense, made him restless. Dangerous. Leora's discovery. Meanwhile, Leora had returned to the palace, despite the Alpha King's warning. She had questions. Too many questions. And the fragments of her mother's letters left her with no choice but to seek answers, even if it meant stepping into the lion's den. The corridors were quiet, almost too quiet. Her footsteps echoed against the polished stone floors, but she moved with purpose. The palace was enormous, full of hidden chambers and secret passages, the perfect place for a girl who had nowhere else to turn. She followed a faint draft down a narrow hallway, drawn to it as if it called her name. At the end of the corridor, a loose stone in the wall revealed a hidden passage. Her pulse quickened. This was no ordinary palace secret. The passage led downward, into the depths beneath the throne room itself. Shadows clung to the walls, whispering in the silence. A strange energy hummed in the air. Old magic, older than the monarchy, and somehow connected to the lunar eclipse. And there, in the deepest chamber, she found it, a series of carved stones, etched with symbols that mirrored the crescent mark on her wrist. Her mother had spoken of these symbols. Her mother had warned her. And now, she finally understood. These stones were part of an ancient ritual. A ritual that could awaken power in one chosen by the moon. The weight of the prophecy. The prophecy was not just a warning. It was a blueprint. As Leora studied the stones, her fingers tracing the carved runes, she realized the truth. Her mother had been protecting her from the palace itself. Someone powerful, someone within Kael's court, had been trying to use her birthright for their own gain. And now, that person was still watching. The shadows in the chamber seemed to shift, and a cold presence made her turn sharply. A guard, a spirit, she didn't know. Her heart pounded as she fled the hidden chamber, barely escaping before the torchlight caught her silhouette. Kael's realization. Kael had felt her movement. From his chambers above, he sensed the shift in the energy below, a disturbance in the palace's hidden magic. He didn't need to see her to know. She was in danger. Throwing on his cloak, Kael moved with supernatural speed through the halls. His senses guided him, sharper than any wolf or human could comprehend. The bond thrummed in his chest, pulling him toward her location, warning him that every second mattered. He reached the hidden passage just as Leora stumbled into the main hallway, breathless and terrified. "You shouldn't be here," he said, but the tone was different now, less accusation, more warning. "I had to know," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear and awe. "I had to understand. Why the mark, why me?" Kael's gaze softened, just slightly, as he stepped closer, the moonlight catching the steel gray of his eyes. "The mark chooses," he said quietly. "And it chose you. That is why you are here, and why you are not safe." The first threat emerges. Even as he spoke, a sound echoed from the shadows, a deliberate, cautious footstep, not human, not wolf, yet with intent. Someone had been following her, watching, waiting. Kael's jaw tightened. The bond with Leora flared violently, warning him that this presence was dangerous, and connected to the secrets her mother had tried to protect her from. He reached for her hand, not just to guide her, but to claim her presence as his. The pull was stronger now, undeniable. We move now, he said firmly. If anyone in this palace seeks to use you, they will answer to me. Leora nodded, trembling, but trusting him. For the first time, she felt that the Alpha King might be her only protector. As they vanished into the night through secret passages known only to the royal line, Kale understood something crucial. This bond, impossible as it seemed, was not just a connection between them. It was a lifeline, and the moment Leora uncovered the palace's hidden secrets, the kingdom itself would begin to tremble. Foreshadowing danger. Back in the throne room, shadows moved where none should have been. A figure in a hood watched from the balcony above, whispering words that only the darkness could hear. Greater than, the girl is awake, and the Alpha King notices. Soon, the pieces will fall into place. Soon, the kingdom will burn. Kale had sensed the threat. Leora had seen it too. But neither of them yet understood just how deep the danger ran, or how much betrayal lay hidden beneath the throne. Chapter 6. The Threat from Within. The palace had never felt smaller. To Kale Draven, it was a cage, a gilded prison filled with whispers and shadows. Every corridor held eyes that watched, every flickering torch cast doubt and suspicion across the stone walls. Even the guards, loyal as they appeared, seemed tense, restless, as if some invisible hand had shifted the balance of power. And in the center of it all was Leora Arden. Kale could feel her before he saw her. The bond pulsed like a heartbeat in his chest, warning him, pulling him closer, demanding his attention. He had tried to dismiss it, to treat it as instinct or coincidence, but now it had become undeniable. Their connection was visible, to him and, dangerously, to others. Rumors in the court. By midday, whispers had begun to circulate. The servants spoke quietly among themselves. The Alpha King is distracted. He glares at shadows no one else can see. They say he's obsessed with a human girl. Even members of his own council weren't immune. The doubts grew, barely concealed behind polite bows and careful smiles. Some were intrigued, some suspicious, and some downright jealous of the attention Kale gave the girl who shouldn't exist in their world. It wasn't long before the first moves were made. A blackmail threat emerges. Kale had just left the training grounds, his anger barely restrained. His pack was restless, his guards uneasy, and every instinct screamed that someone was plotting. Then came the message. A folded parchment slipped under the throne room door, sealed with a dark sigil. Kale tore it open and scanned the words, each one a dagger. Greater than, the girl you value so highly is a threat to everything you rule. Obey, or her secret will destroy your pack. His jaw tightened. Every alpha in history had faced enemies and assassins, but this was personal. Someone within his palace itself was daring to manipulate him, using Leora as a pawn. He crumpled the note, the paper ripping beneath his hands. The bond in his chest pulsed furiously, warning him that the danger was closer than he thought. Leora's confusion. Meanwhile, Leora was unaware that she had become the center of a power struggle. She wandered the gardens, trying to piece together the fragments of her mother's letters, when a cloaked figure appeared, blocking her path. You shouldn't have come here alone, the figure hissed. Leora's pulse quickened. She reached instinctively for her satchel, only to feel Kale's presence like a shield in the distance, pulling her towards safety. I didn't mean to, she began, but the figure stepped forward, revealing a dagger glinting in the moonlight. Before she could react, Kale emerged from the shadows, his cloak billowing like a storm. In one motion, he disarmed the attacker, his hand steady, his gaze freezing the would-be threat in place. Leave, he said, his voice low, dangerous, and final. The figure backed away, eyes wide with fear. This isn't over, they whispered, disappearing into the night. Kale's eyes softened only slightly as he looked at Leora. You're not safe here, not while the palace hides its enemies. The pack whispers. Word traveled quickly through the pack. Wolves murmured in hidden corners. The Alpha King is losing control. He risks everything for a human. Can he even protect the pack anymore? Some of the elders questioned his judgment outright. The bond, once invisible, was now causing unease. They did not understand it, nor did they respect it. And Kale, he barely noticed the rumors. His focus was singular. Protect her, understand her, and confront the threat before it consumes everything. A growing obsession. That night, Kale stood alone in the moonlit courtyard, watching Leora sleep in her chamber across the palace. The bond in his chest burned, demanding attention, reminding him that her life and his reign were now intertwined in ways he couldn't control. He had faced war. He had faced death. He had faced enemies with knives and teeth and magic. But this was different. This was an enemy that hid in shadows, that played with his heart while threatening the kingdom itself. And Kale Draven, Alpha King of Valerius, realized something terrifying. The enemy wasn't just outside the palace walls. The enemy wasn't just a rival pack or a treacherous council member. The enemy was someone who knew both him and her too well. And if they succeeded, Leora would pay the price. The pack would fracture. His rule could crumble. Kale's hands clenched into fists. He had faced prophecy before. He had faced fate itself. But the pull in his chest reminded him, this was not just about power. This was about her life. And an Alpha King never lets what he values most slip away. Chapter 7. Banishment of the Heart. The palace had never felt colder. Kale Draven walked the halls with a storm in his chest, each step echoing like a drum of warning. The bond with Leora throbbed against his ribcage, demanding attention, pulling at him with every heartbeat. He had sensed it for days, the whispers, the shadows, the dangerous glances that weren't just curiosity. Someone inside the palace was moving against them, and soon, it would force him to act. He didn't yet know who, but he would find out. The ultimatum. Leora had received the message in secret, slipped under the door of her small chamber. Greater than, leave, or everything you love will be taken from you. Disappear before dawn, or the Alpha King's pack will suffer. Your death will not be mourned, only remembered as a warning. Her fingers shook as she held the parchment. The words were cruel, sharp as daggers. The handwriting, familiar. She hadn't seen it before, yet something about it resonated, echoing warnings her mother had whispered long ago. She knew what she had to do. If she stayed, Kale would be targeted. His pack would be endangered. And the palace would descend into chaos, a trap she could not allow to unfold. Even though it broke her heart, she began preparing for disappearance. The final night together, Kale arrived at her chamber just as the moon reached its highest point, faintly glowing through the curtains. He had followed the pull of the bond again, sensing her fear and the dangerous energy in the air. Leora, he said, his voice low and commanding, yet edged with worry, something is happening. Who sent this? She shook her head. I can't tell you. Not yet. But you have to trust me. Kale's steel-gray eyes softened, just slightly. Trust me. I've protected this kingdom, fought wars, and faced every danger imaginable. And now, you're asking me to trust you while the threat is here. Her gaze met his. Because if I don't leave, they will hurt you. They will hurt the pack. And you'll lose everything. The weight of her words hit him like a physical blow. The bond pulsed violently, screaming that she was the truth of his world, yet also the danger threatening it. Kale reached for her hand, but she stepped back, holding his gaze with tears glimmering in her eyes. I love you, she whispered. More than I should. But if I stay, I'll destroy you. The vanishing. By midnight, Leora had left. She had faked her own death, leaving behind a carefully staged scene that made it appear she had been attacked and killed by unknown assailants. The palace erupted in chaos, guards running through corridors, calling alarms, and wolves howling in grief. Kale arrived moments later, only to find the chamber empty, and the signs of struggle meticulously crafted to fool even the sharpest eyes. The bond in his chest screamed. She was alive. She had left him. And yet, she had vanished without a trace. Rage and grief collided inside him. For the first time, the Alpha King felt vulnerable. The palace reacts. The pack mourned publicly. Wolves whispered in the corridors. The Alpha King has lost her. He cannot control himself. Some say he has even harmed himself for love. Kale ignored them all, but inside, his world had shifted. The palace he ruled, the throne he had earned, the power he had wielded, none of it mattered compared to the girl who had vanished from his life. Every corner of the kingdom, every shadow, every whisper reminded him, she was gone. And he was powerless. The first descent. Kale retreated to the moonlit courtyard, pacing under the crescent light that mirrored the mark on Leora's wrist. The bond flared again, almost unbearable. He could feel her heartbeat somewhere out there, somewhere beyond his reach. He clenched his fists. Wolves might whisper, nobles might plot, rivals might smile at his loss. But Kale Draven, Alpha King of Valerieuse, would find her. And when he did, the world would burn. Because the Alpha King, betrayed in love and denied what was rightfully his, was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The first tears he had allowed himself to shed since his coronation burned away as rage replaced them. The hunt had begun, and the prey he sought was the one he loved most. Chapter 8. The Moonbound Revelation. The night was silent, yet it vibrated with tension. Kale Draven stood alone in the highest tower of the palace, the moon's pale light cascading across his shoulders. Since Leora's disappearance, days had blended into nights in a haze of anger, worry, and obsession. Every whisper in the halls, every shift in the shadows, every distant howl of his pack felt like a thread connecting him to the girl he could not reach. And now, for the first time, he began to see the pattern, the threads forming into a tapestry of betrayal and danger. The first clues. Kale had scoured the palace for signs, letters, messages, anything hidden in corners that might reveal who had forced Leora to vanish. Then he found it, a set of coded symbols etched into a hidden ledger in the council archives. Symbols that mirrored the ones Leora had discovered in the hidden chamber beneath the throne room. They were ancient runes tied to the lunar bond, and their presence in the ledger confirmed Kale's suspicions. Leora's disappearance was no accident. Her mother had tried to protect her. Someone within the palace wanted to use her power for their own gain. The bond flared in his chest, burning hotter than it had since the coronation. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The girl was not just gone. She was being manipulated, her fate tied to a plan that threatened everything he had built. The bond awakens. Kale closed his eyes and focused on the bond. He felt her heartbeat, faint but steady, miles away. She was alive, and the pull between them, stronger now than ever, revealed something terrifying. The bond wasn't just emotional. It was magical, woven by the moon itself. He could sense her fear, her grief, her desperation. But he could also sense something else, potential, raw and untamed. A power that could stabilize him, or destroy him. He clenched his fists. Leora was not just his mate. She was the key to his control. Without her, his anger, his power, his very instincts could spiral out of control. The council's betrayal. Kale's investigation led him deeper into the palace's secrets, and the truth that emerged shocked even him. Some members of the council had known. Some had plotted. They had orchestrated Leora's disappearance, hoping to manipulate the Alpha King, to weaken him and seize power for themselves. The betrayal ran deeper than Kale had imagined. Faces he trusted, wolves who swore loyalty, were complicit in a conspiracy that threatened both Leora and the kingdom. Anger and fury flared, almost uncontrollable. The bond pulsed in tandem with his rage. Every instinct told him to strike, to purge the palace of traitors. But he paused. He needed a plan. He needed Leora back alive. A dangerous revelation. In the hidden chamber beneath the throne, Kale discovered more than just the symbols. The ancient stones were not only markers of Leora's destiny, they were instructions, a guide to awakening the bond fully. The prophecy had been partially fulfilled, but only the final step remained. Kale realized that the Alpha King and the moon-marked human were linked not only by fate but by power that could shake the entire kingdom. If the council succeeded in controlling her, the consequences would be catastrophic. A new resolve. Kale left the chamber with a renewed sense of purpose. His plan was no longer just to find Leora. It was to reclaim her, to sever the council's control, and to awaken the bond fully, no matter the cost. He could feel the danger growing. The threads of conspiracy were closing in, and each passing moment put Leora's life at greater risk. And yet, he felt her presence in the distance. A soft pulse of connection that whispered of hope, of survival, of their eventual reunion. Kale's jaw tightened. His eyes, once cold and calculating, now burned with a singular fire. He would find her. He would protect her. And anyone who dared stand in their way would pay. The moon's pale glow reflected off the stones of the palace. It was a warning, and Kale Draven, Alpha King of Valerius, was ready to answer it. Chapter 9. The hunt begins. The night air was sharp, slicing through the stillness like a blade. Kale Draven moved through the shadows of Valerius with the precision of a predator born to rule. Every muscle in his body was coiled, every sense heightened. The bond with Leora throbbed violently in his chest, pulling him forward, guiding him toward her. He could feel her heartbeat, faint but unmistakable, like a thread weaving across the miles that separated them. She was alive, and that was all that mattered. Tracking the unseen enemy, Kale's first steps were cautious. The palace was riddled with spies, traitors, and hidden watchers. Anyone could be complicit in Leora's disappearance, anyone could be lying. He moved silently through the streets, shadow blending with shadow, relying on instincts honed over years of ruling and hunting. Wolves patrolled the outskirts of the city, but even they were unaware of the subtle threads of conspiracy that now laced every corner. Kale closed his eyes for a moment, focusing entirely on the bond. The pull guided him, a direction, a rhythm, a heartbeat that grew stronger with each step. He followed it through dark alleys, across frozen courtyards, and toward a place he had once thought safe, the northern forest on the edge of the kingdom. Leora in hiding. Leora had taken refuge in a small, abandoned hunting lodge deep within the forest. She had fled from the palace at dawn, guided by instinct and the fragments of her mother's letters. The lodge was humble, almost hidden by the thick pines, and the bond flared as Kale approached. She felt it too, a pulse in the distance, steady and commanding, calling her, warning her, demanding her attention. She wanted to run, to hide, to vanish further. But the pull was impossible to resist. Even in fear, she longed for him. And somewhere, deep inside, she knew he would find her. The first confrontation. Kale arrived outside the lodge, stepping silently over the snow-covered ground. He sensed her presence clearly now, fear, determination, and a strange spark of something more. Before he could call out, a shadow detached itself from the trees, a figure watching, waiting, holding a dagger glinting in the faint moonlight. "Stop," Kale said, his voice a growl that carried authority through the forest. "Step away, or you die." The figure laughed, low and dangerous. "You don't even know what's coming, Alpha King. That girl is part of something far greater than you." Kale's eyes narrowed. He could feel the bond flaring violently in his chest, warning him that the threat was not only real but intimately connected to Leora. The figure lunged, and Kale moved faster than thought, disarming the attacker with precision and a single sweep of his arm. The shadow fell back, eyes wide with shock and fear. "This isn't over," the figure whispered, retreating into the darkness. Kale's focus snapped to Leora's hiding place. The lodge door creaked. "Leora," he called, his voice gentler now, full of the tension and need that had been building for days. "It's me. Come out." The reunion, tense and fragile. Leora hesitated, trembling. She had been alone for days, surviving on instinct and the fragments of her mother's warnings. Seeing Kale now, his presence, his intensity, the raw power radiating from him, she wanted to collapse into his arms, but fear still held her back. I didn't want you to get hurt, she whispered. You think I care about my safety? Kale's eyes softened just slightly. I care about you, always. You understand that. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. The bond between them pulsed stronger than ever, a living thread pulling them together across fear, danger, and distance. Kale stepped closer, but his instincts screamed that they were not safe. We can't stay here. They're tracking you, and they're not human. Leora shivered, realizing that her fears were justified. The attackers, the council conspirators, the hidden enemies, all of them had been manipulating her from the start. The first glimpse of betrayal. As they prepared to leave the lodge, Kale sensed a deeper betrayal. Someone had orchestrated this entire chain of events. The council's traitors were not acting alone. Someone close to him knew more than they should, feeding information, manipulating threats, and ensuring Leora remained at risk. The realization made his chest tighten. His rage flared, but the bond held him steady. She was alive. She was safe, for now. And for the first time, Kale allowed himself to plan. Find the conspirators. Protect Leora. Uncover the truth. No one would escape his wrath. The hunt had begun, and Kale Draven, Alpha King of Valerieus, was unstoppable when the one he loved was in danger. Chapter 10. Shadows of Betrayal. The forest was alive with sound. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a branch, and every whisper of the wind seemed amplified under the full moon. Kale Draven moved silently beside Leora, his senses razor-sharp, every muscle coiled like a spring. The bond pulsed violently in his chest, guiding him, warning him, demanding his attention. She was alive. She was with him. And yet, danger lurked in every shadow. The first ambush. They had barely reached the edge of the forest when the first attack came. From the trees, cloaked figures lunged with knives and dark magic crackling from their fingertips. Kale reacted instantly. The Alpha King's movements were fluid, almost supernatural, as he deflected blades, disarmed attackers, and lashed out with inhuman strength. Leora froze for a moment, fear and adrenaline clashing inside her. But the bond pulsed again, strong, insistent, and protective. She realized she could feel Kale's presence even in the chaos, and instinctively, she moved with him, dodging, ducking, and narrowly escaping the strike of a dagger aimed at her. You're with me, Kale growled, grabbing her hand and pulling her into the safety of a shadowed grove. She nodded, heart pounding, fear replaced by determination. They were a team now, bound by fate, by danger, and by something deeper neither fully understood. The truth revealed. After the ambush, Kale paused, pressing his hand against Leora's arm as the adrenaline faded. His eyes, intense and searching, held hers. They're not acting alone, he said, voice low, dangerous. The council isn't just corrupt, they've been manipulated. Someone inside the palace wants you, wants your power, and they're willing to destroy everything to get it. Leora's stomach dropped. But who? My mother's letters. She warned me, but I never knew who. Kale's jaw tightened. I will find out, and whoever it is, they'll regret ever crossing me. The bond pulsed again, as if confirming his resolve. Leora felt it too, a connection beyond words, a promise and a warning at the same time. The bond awakens. As they moved deeper into the forest, the moonlight illuminating their path, Leora realized something startling. She could feel Kale's emotions, his anger, his protective instincts, even his fear. It was as if the bond was more than just a link. It was a living force, awakening inside both of them. Kale, I feel it, she whispered, gripping his hand. It's like I can sense you, even when you're not right beside me. It's the bond, isn't it? He didn't answer immediately, his jaw tight, eyes scanning the darkness. Finally, he said, voice low and raw, yes. And it's dangerous. The stronger it grows, the more it ties you to me, and the more enemies will come after us. But it also means, I won't lose you again. Not ever. Her chest tightened, and for a moment, all the fear, all the running, all the uncertainty melted away. In that instant, nothing mattered except the bond, the moon, and him. The first major confrontation. The shadows shifted, and a figure stepped into the clearing ahead. It was tall, cloaked, and radiated power that made even Kale's hackles rise. "Kale Draven," the figure hissed. "You've grown reckless. Protecting her won't save you. She belongs to us, and she always will." Kale stepped forward, placing himself between Leora and the intruder. "No one touches her," he said, his voice like steel. "If you think for 1 second I'll let you take her, you're wrong." The battle erupted instantly, blades clashing, magic flaring, and the bond thrumming with every strike. Leora, though human, found herself moving with unnatural grace, instinctively dodging attacks, guided by Kale's presence. Together, they were a force, a living manifestation of prophecy, fated mates bound by danger and desire. The aftermath. When the dust settled, the intruder lay defeated, but not dead. Kale knelt beside Leora, his chest heaving, eyes scanning the darkness for further threats. "We need to move," he said, gripping her hand tightly. "This was just the beginning. They'll come again, and next time, it will be worse." Leora nodded, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She realized something she hadn't dared to admit before: she trusted him completely. Not just because he had saved her, but because the bond between them was undeniable, unbreakable, and terrifyingly real. As they disappeared deeper into the forest, shadows flickering under the moonlight, Kale's mind raced. The Council's traitors, the intruder, the ambushers, it all pointed to one thing: the war for Leora's power, and the Alpha King's heart, was only just beginning. Foreshadowing the next threat. Above them, the moon shone brighter, the silver crescent illuminating the forest like a beacon. Somewhere, in the shadows, a voice whispered, "Greater than, they are united, but the Alpha King underestimates the lengths we will go. Soon, the kingdom will burn, and she will be ours, or he will fall trying." Kale didn't hear it yet, but the bond pulsed, warning him that the true battle was far from over. And for the first time, both he and Leora understood that their love, fated, dangerous, and powerful, was also a target. The hunt had only just begun.